The envelope had been sitting in my bag for 3 days before I finally decided to use it. I kept reaching in and touching it, feeling the thick paper, the embossed return address from Hartwell and Associates law firm in the corner. My mom's attorney had handed it to me personally at the reading of her will, looked me straight in the eyes, and said, "You'll know when the right moment comes, sweetheart. Your mother was very specific about that." At the time, I had no idea what he meant, but 3 days later, sitting at my dad's kitchen table, while my stepmother counted money that wasn't hers, I understood completely. My name is Olivia Marsh. I'm 24 years old, and I grew up in Columbus, Ohio. I'm the only child of Daniel and Catherine Marsh, though technically my dad remarried 6 years ago, so I suppose there's a whole new chapter to that story. My mom, Catherine, passed away 11 months ago from ovarian cancer. She fought for 2 years with more grace and dignity than I have ever seen any human being carry. She never complained. She never felt sorry for herself. She spent the last months of her life making sure everyone around her was going to be okay, everyone, that is, except the one person who had spent years trying to squeeze herself into spaces she was never invited into. That person was my stepmother, Renee. Before I tell you what happened at that kitchen table, I need to back up, because none of this makes sense without the full picture of who my mother was and what she built. My mom was a financial consultant. She was brilliant with money, not in a cold corporate way, but in this deeply intentional way. She grew up poor in rural Kentucky, the youngest of 5 kids, wearing hand-me-down clothes and eating government cheese on white bread for dinner. She used to tell me that poverty isn't just about not having money. It's about feeling like money is always one emergency away from disappearing. So when she built her career, she built it with that fear as fuel. By the time she was 40, she had her own small consulting firm, a paid-off house in a quiet neighborhood in Columbus, and a retirement account that would make most people's eyes water. She was proud of it, not in a showy way, but in the way someone is proud of something they bled for. When she and my dad divorced, I was 13, she kept the house and they split everything else fairly. She never fought dirty. She never tried to take more than what was hers. That was just who she was. Even the divorce was handled with class. My dad remarried 2 years later. Renee was 41, twice divorced herself, with a personality like a slow gas leak. You don't notice it right away, but eventually it makes the whole house feel wrong. She was charming when she wanted to be. Funny even. But she had this habit of looking at things that belonged to other people and deciding they should belong to her instead. I noticed it early. A sweater of mine she borrowed and never returned. A necklace my grandmother left me that ended up in her jewelry box. Small things, but patterns are made of small things. My dad, bless his heart, is one of those men who genuinely cannot see manipulation when it's wrapped in a pretty package. He's a good man in many ways, hardworking, loyal, funny, but he has a blind spot the size of Lake Erie when it comes to Renee. Whatever she says, he believes. Whatever she wants, he finds a way to justify. I stopped trying to change that years ago. Some people have to learn certain lessons the hard way. When my mom got sick, I moved back to Columbus from Pittsburgh, where I'd been working as a graphic designer. I took on remote work so I could be with her. Those 2 years were the hardest and most meaningful of my life. My mom and I talked about everything during that time, her childhood, her regrets, her proudest moments. And yes, we talked about the money she had accumulated, through a combination of smart investments, her consulting work, and the sale of her firm when she got too sick to run it, approximately $400,000 in liquid assets. There was also the house, but she'd already planned to leave that to a cousin who had helped her in ways I'm not going to get into here. The $400,000, she was explicit. She wanted it to go to me, and she wanted it to be protected in a very specific way. She had worked with her attorney, a kind but extremely sharp man named Gerald Hartwell, to set it up so that the money would come to me in a structured disbursement over 3 years, protected by a legal trust. She told me why she did it that way. "I love you, Olivia, and I trust you completely. But I've seen what money does to people around grieving children. I want to make sure it gets to you safely, without interference." She didn't say Renee's name. She didn't have to. My mom died on a Tuesday morning in October, quiet, peaceful, at home, with me holding her hand. There are no words for that kind of loss, so I won't try to find them right now. What I will say is that I held myself together through the funeral, through the reception at the house, through the weeks that followed. I had a job to do honoring her, handling her affairs, being present. The will reading happened 3 weeks after the funeral. It was straightforward. Gerald Hartwell went through everything with calm precision. The house to my cousin. The personal belongings split among close family members and friends, all clearly named. And the $400,000, held in trust, to be dispersed to me, Olivia Marsh, over a 3-year period with Gerald's firm overseeing the trust. Renee wasn't at the will reading. She wasn't named in it. She had no legal standing to be there. But that didn't stop what happened next. It started that same evening. My dad called me around 8 o'clock, which I thought was just a check-in call. Instead, after about 30 seconds of small talk, he said, "Renee wants to talk to you about the inheritance." I remember I sat down slowly on my couch. "What about it, Dad?" He cleared his throat. "Well, she feels that since she's been part of this family for 6 years, and since she helped take care of your mom in certain ways." I stopped him right there. Dad, Renee and Mom spoke maybe 4 times in 6 years, and 3 of those times were at family events where they were in the same room. "What are you talking about?" He got quiet. "Olivia, she's your family too. We're hoping you'll consider being generous." I said I needed to think about it and hung up. I didn't sleep that night. The next 2 days were a parade of pressure. Renee texted me 3 times. Long, carefully worded messages about family unity and how money shouldn't divide people, and how she'd always considered me like a daughter. Then my dad called again, this time more directly. "Your mother would have wanted you to share this with your family, Olivia. Renee is your family." I don't know what came over me in that moment. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just said very calmly, "I'll come over Sunday. We can talk then." He seemed relieved. He shouldn't have been, because that's when I remembered the envelope. Gerald Hartwell had handed it to me at the end of the will reading, quietly, almost like a magician palming a card. "Your mother prepared this herself," he said. "She asked me to tell you that you'd know when to open it and when to share it." I'd put it in my bag and, in the fog of grief, sort of forgotten about it. But standing in my kitchen after hanging up with my dad, I went to my bag, took it out, and held it. I opened it slowly, sitting at my kitchen counter. Inside were 2 things. The first was a handwritten letter from my mother, 4 pages in her neat, looping handwriting. I won't share all of it, some of it is too private, too sacred, but I'll tell you what mattered for what came next. She wrote about Renee. Not with bitterness. My mother wasn't bitter, but she wrote with clarity. She had documented, over the course of her illness, a series of interactions and incidents involving Renee that I hadn't fully known about. Renee had called my mom twice while she was sick, not to offer comfort, but to ask questions about her estate planning. Renee had told mutual acquaintances that she expected to be taken care of after Catherine passed. Renee had even at one point told someone in my dad's family that she and my dad were planning to contest the will if they were excluded. My mother had anticipated all of it. The second item in the envelope was a sealed legal document, accompanied by a short note in Gerald's handwriting that said, "To be presented if needed. Your mother was very thorough." I didn't fully understand the legal language, but I understood enough. It was a notarized letter from my mother, written with Gerald's help, explicitly stating that Renee had no claim, moral, legal, or familial, to any portion of her estate, and detailing the documentation my mother had gathered to support that position. It also included a summary of the trust's legal protections, and a note that Gerald had already filed the appropriate documents to make any external contest of the trust extremely difficult and expensive to pursue. My mom had built a wall, and she'd handed me the key to show people the wall existed. Sunday came. I drove to my dad's house in the afternoon. It was a cold November day, the kind where the sky is white and the trees look like they've given up. I parked in the driveway and sat in my car for a minute, breathing. Then I got out, walked up the steps, and rang the doorbell. My dad opened it, gave me a hug that felt a little stiff, a little guilty. Renee was in the living room, sitting in the armchair like she was holding court. She smiled at me. I smiled back. We sat down. Renee started talking almost immediately. She had clearly rehearsed. She talked about family. She talked about how hard the last few years had been, how she had supported my dad through grief too, how she felt like she'd been a mother figure to me whether I acknowledged it or not. She talked about how $400,000 was a lot for one young person, and how a family should take care of each other. My dad nodded along, occasionally adding, "That's right," or "We just want to be fair, sweetheart." I let her finish. I waited a full 3 seconds after she stopped talking, then I opened my bag and took out the envelope. I set it on the coffee table between us, and slid it toward my dad. "Mom left this," I said. "Her attorney gave it to me after the will reading. She said I'd know when to share it." Renee's eyes went to the envelope immediately. My dad looked confused. He picked it up. I told him to go ahead and read it. I'd already read my personal portion, and what was left was meant to be shared with him. He read slowly. Renee kept glancing at him, trying to read his face. His expression started neutral, then tightened. I watched his jaw set. At one point he stopped, looked at a specific page for a long time, and then put the papers down on his knee. His eyes were wet. Not crying, not yet, but wet. That was the first time in my life I had ever seen my dad's eyes fill with tears. He didn't say anything for almost a minute. Then he said quietly, "She documented all of this?" "Gerald Hartwell did," I said, "on her behalf. The legal document explains the protections around the trust. Any attempt to contest it would be expensive, time-consuming, and almost certainly unsuccessful. Mom made sure of that." Renee had gone very still. The warmth she'd walked into the room with had drained out of her face completely. She looked at my dad. "Daniel, not right now," he said. His voice was low and flat in a way I'd never heard from him. The silence in that room was enormous. I didn't gloat. I didn't make a speech. I didn't need to. My mother had done everything that needed to be done, with grace and legal precision, from beyond a place I can't even imagine. I simply said, "I love you, Dad. I hope we can move forward from here." Then I picked up my bag, stood up, and walked out. I sat in my car in the driveway and cried for a long time. Not out of triumph, not out of anger. I cried because my mother had loved me so specifically, so carefully, so far ahead of time. She had seen what was coming, and she had protected me from it while she was fighting for her own life. I cried because I missed her in a way that doesn't have a bottom. I cried because that letter had her voice in it, her humor, her precise handwriting, and reading it had felt like holding her hand one more time. In the weeks that followed, things shifted in quiet but significant ways. My dad called me about 2 weeks later. He didn't bring up the inheritance at all. He just asked how I was doing, whether I was eating enough, whether I'd had any good design projects lately. It was the most normal conversation we'd had in years. I don't know exactly what happened between him and Renee. After I left, I haven't asked, and he hasn't volunteered. What I do know is that Renee has been notably absent from family gatherings since then. My aunt, my dad's sister, told me quietly at Christmas that things had changed at Daniel's house. I didn't push for details. Gerald Hartwell called me the following month to initiate the first disbursement from the trust. He was professional and warm, and at the end of the call he said, "Your mother was one of the most prepared clients I've ever worked with. She thought of everything." I thanked him, and after I hung up I sat quietly for a while and let that sink in. She thought of everything. I used part of the first disbursement to finally get a proper office set up for my freelance work, something I'd been putting off for 2 years. I bought a drafting desk that I'd had bookmarked for 18 months, good lighting, a decent chair. Small things, but intentional things. I thought my mom would have appreciated that. She always said the best thing you can do with money is use it on purpose. I also started a small scholarship fund at my mom's alma mater, a community college in Kentucky, where she had taken her first business class at 20 years old. It's not massive, a couple thousand a year, but it felt right. It felt like something she would have done. I named it the Catherine Marsh Memorial Scholarship for first-generation business students. When I submitted the paperwork, the financial aid coordinator emailed me back within hours and said, "This is going to mean everything to someone." I printed that email out and put it on my new drafting desk. I think about my mom every single day. That's not grief anymore. Not exactly, it's more like a constant quiet companionship. I hear her voice sometimes when I'm making a decision. I see her in the way I organize my finances, in the way I refuse to let fear make my choices for me. She raised me to be steady, to be precise, to know my own worth so well that no one else's opinion of it could shake me. And I think about that envelope. The fact that she sat down, probably on one of the harder days of her illness when she was tired and in pain, and she thought, "What will Olivia need after I'm gone? What storms are coming that I can shelter her from before I leave?" She didn't do it out of revenge. She didn't do it out of bitterness toward Renee. She did it purely out of love for me, this fierce, thorough, preemptive love that reached forward in time and wrapped around me exactly when I needed it. I've heard people say that the dead can't protect us. I understand why they say that. But I am living proof that a mother who loves you enough can build something that outlasts her, a shelter made of intention, and legal documents and 4 pages of handwritten truth that cuts right through every lie told at a kitchen table. If you're reading this, if you're going through something similar, if someone is pressuring you over something that was left to you by someone you loved, I want you to hear this. Your grief does not make you obligated. Your loss does not make you indebted. Someone loving you and leaving you something is not a negotiation to be had with people who weren't in that relationship. You are allowed to protect what was given to you in love. My name is Olivia Marsh. I am 24 years old. I live in Columbus, Ohio. My mother worked her entire life to build something from nothing, and she made sure it found its way to me. And somewhere I truly believe she is sitting with a cup of tea and a satisfied smile, because she always said that good planning is the purest form of love. She wasn't wrong. She was never wrong.